In 1162, a baby boy was born in a small tent on the freezing Mongolian steppe. His father was a minor tribal chief. His family had no land, no wealth, and no real power. They were nobody. But by the time that boy drew his last breath, he had conquered more territory than any human being who had ever lived. He had toppled kingdoms that had stood for thousands of years. He had redrawn the map of the entire world. He had changed the course of human history so completely that we are still feeling the effects of his life today. His name was Temujin, and the world would come to know him as Genghis Khan. This is the full story of how one man from a tiny tribe built the largest empire the world has ever seen, and what happened when it was gone. At Time Nexus, we take the biggest moments in history and break them down so they actually make sense. No textbook language, no dry lectures, just the story, the way it deserves to be told. Let's get into it. To understand Genghis Khan, you first need to understand the world he was born into, because it was one of the most brutal environments on Earth. The Mongolian steppe in the 12th century was a vast, wind-swept grassland stretching thousands of miles across Central Asia.
There were no cities, no kingdoms, no written laws, just hundreds of nomadic tribes constantly moving, constantly fighting each other for horses, grazing land, food, and survival. Life on the steppe was short and violent. Alliances shifted constantly. Betrayal was common. And the strongest tribes simply took what they wanted from the weaker ones. It was into this world, a world of chaos, survival, and endless tribal warfare, that Temujin was born. His father, Yesuge, was the chief of a small tribe called the Borjigin. Not a powerful tribe, not a feared tribe, just one of dozens of small groups scraping out an existence on the steppe. When Temujin was born, his father reportedly found him clutching a blood clot in his fist, a sign, the Mongols believed, that the child was destined to be a great warrior. Nobody could have known just how right that omen would turn out to be. Temujin's early life was defined by hardship, loss, and humiliation. When he was 9 years old, his father took him to meet the family of a young girl named Borte, to arrange a future marriage, as was the custom on the steppe. On the way home, Yesuge stopped to eat with members of a rival tribe, the Tartars. They poisoned him. Temujin's father was dead before he made it home. With their chief gone, the Borjigin tribe made a brutal decision. They abandoned Temujin's family entirely. His mother, Hwelen, was left alone on the steppe with Temujin and his siblings. No protection, no food, no tribe. They survived by eating roots, berries, wild onions, and whatever small animals they could catch with their bare hands. For years, they lived on the edge of starvation. Then things got worse. When Temujin was a teenager, a rival tribe called the Taichurt captured him and held him as a slave. He was forced to wear a wooden collar around his neck, a mark of total submission and humiliation. He eventually escaped, but the experience left a deep mark. And then, shortly after his marriage to Borte, a tribe called the Merkids raided his camp and kidnapped her. For a proud warrior on the Mongolian steppe, having your wife taken was one of the greatest humiliations imaginable. Temujin was furious. But instead of charging in recklessly, he did something that revealed who he truly was. He went and found allies. He built a coalition. He planned carefully. Then he struck, and he get Borte back. Every hardship Temujin faced, the abandonment, the slavery, the kidnapping, he turned into a lesson, into fuel. And slowly, he began to build something nobody on the steppe had ever seen before.
Most tribal leaders on the Mongolian steppe operated the same way. You conquered a tribe, you took their women and horses, you enslaved or killed the men, and you moved on. Temujin did something completely different. Instead of destroying the tribes he defeated, he absorbed them. He broke up the old tribal hierarchies and reorganized everyone into new units. Units that were loyal to him personally, not to any bloodline or clan. He promoted warriors purely on merit, their skill, their loyalty, their courage, regardless of where they came from. This was completely revolutionary for the time. A man born into a weak tribe could rise to command thousands of warriors under Temujin. A man born into a powerful family, but who showed cowardice or disloyalty, would be stripped of everything. The result was an army that was fiercely loyal, highly motivated, and completely meritocratic, something the ancient world had almost never seen. Temujin also had an extraordinary ability to inspire personal loyalty. He shared food equally with his soldiers, he shared the spoils of war, he protected the families of fallen warriors. Men who had been his enemies became his most devoted followers, because he treated them with a respect they had never experienced before. Tribe by tribe, victory by victory, Temujin's power grew. He defeated the Tartars, the tribe that had poisoned his father, and wiped them out almost. Most tribal leaders on the Mongolian steppe operated the same way. You conquered a tribe, you took their women and horses, you enslaved or killed the men, and you moved on. Temujin did something completely different. Instead of destroying the tribes he defeated, he absorbed them. He broke up the old tribal hierarchies and reorganized everyone into new units, units that were loyal to him personally, not to any bloodline or clan. He promoted warriors based purely on merit, their skill, their loyalty, their courage, regardless of where they came from. This was completely revolutionary for the time. A man born into a weak tribe could rise to command thousands of warriors under Temujin. A man born into a powerful family, but who showed cowardice or disloyalty, would be stripped of everything. The result was an army that was fiercely loyal, highly motivated, and completely meritocratic, something the ancient world had almost never seen. Temujin also had an extraordinary ability to inspire personal loyalty. He shared food equally with his soldiers, he shared the spoils of war, he protected the families of fallen warriors. Men who had been his enemies became his most devoted followers, because he treated them with a respect they had never experienced before. Tribe by tribe, victory by victory, Temujin's power grew. He defeated the Tartars, the tribe that had poisoned his father, and wiped them out almost entirely. He defeated the Taichute, the tribe that had enslaved him. He defeated the Merkits, the tribe that had kidnapped his wife. Every old enemy fell. Every new ally was bound to him by loyalty and shared victory. And in 1206, at a great assembly of all the Mongolian tribes called the Kurultai, something happened that had never happened in the history of the steppe. Every tribe, every single one, gathered together and declared one man their universal ruler.
Temujin was given the title Genghis Khan, Great Ruler, Universal Ruler. The fractured, warring tribes of Mongolia were united for the first time in history under a single man. And that man immediately turned his eyes outward, toward the rest of the world. The Mongol army that Genghis Khan now commanded was unlike anything the world had ever encountered. Every single soldier was a horseman from birth. Mongol children learned to ride before they could walk. They learned to shoot a bow from horseback at full gallop before they were teenagers. By adulthood, a Mongol warrior was not just a soldier. He was a weapon on horseback, capable of covering enormous distances at speed, striking hard and disappearing before the enemy could respond. The Mongols also used tactics that were centuries ahead of their time. One of their most devastating was the feigned retreat, where Mongol cavalry would pretend to flee, drawing the enemy army into a chaotic pursuit, and then suddenly turn and destroy them from all sides.
It worked almost every single time, because enemy commanders simply could not believe that a retreating army was actually leading them into a trap. The Mongols also used psychological warfare brilliantly. Before attacking a city, they would send messengers with a simple message: surrender now, and your city will be spared. Resist, and every living thing within your walls will be destroyed. Many cities surrendered without a single arrow being fired, simply because they had heard what happened to the cities that refused. And the cities that did refuse, the stories were horrifying enough to make the next city think very carefully. The Mongols also adapted their tactics constantly, borrowing siege technology from Chinese engineers, incorporating skilled craftsmen and administrators from conquered peoples into their own operations. They were not just brute force, they were strategic, adaptable, and terrifyingly efficient. Between 1206 and 1227, Genghis Khan personally led campaigns that shook the entire known world. He turned first to northern China, specifically the Xi kingdom, and then the Jin dynasty, which had long looked down on the Mongols as primitive barbarians. The Jin dynasty had a population of over 50 million people. They had massive walled cities, professional armies, and advanced technology. The Mongols had none of that. It didn't matter. The Mongols learned siege warfare from Chinese engineers they captured and turned those skills against the very cities that had taught them. City after city fell. The Jin dynasty was shattered. Then Genghis Khan turned west, toward the Khwarezmian Empire, one of the most powerful Islamic empires of the time, stretching across modern-day Iran, Uzbekistan, and Afghanistan. The trigger was almost absurd. The Khwarezmian Shah executed a group of Mongol merchants and diplomats that Genghis Khan had sent in peace. It was the worst decision the Shah ever made. Genghis Khan responded with the full force of his army, and the Khwarezmian Empire, which had seemed invincible, was completely destroyed in just 3 years. Great cities like Samarkand, Bukhara, and Merv, centres of Islamic civilization, culture, and learning, were reduced to ruins. The destruction was so complete that some of these regions took centuries to recover. By the time of his death in 1227, Genghis Khan had personally conquered an area roughly 4 times the size of Alexander the Great's empire, and he had done it in less than 25 years. Genghis Khan died in 1227, under circumstances that are still debated by historians. Some say he fell from his horse. Others say he was wounded in battle. Some sources suggest illness. He was buried in secret, according to his wishes, in an unmarked grave somewhere in the Mongolian steppe. To this day, his tomb has never been found. But his empire did not die with him. His sons and grandsons continued the expansion with terrifying momentum. His son Ogede conquered the rest of northern China,
and pushed deep into Russia and Eastern Europe, destroying the armies of Poland and Hungary and reaching the gates of Vienna. Only the death of Ogedei Khan in 1241 stopped the invasion of Western Europe. The Mongol commanders returned home to elect a new leader, and Europe was spared, almost by accident. His grandson Hulagu sacked Baghdad in 1258, destroying the Abbasid Caliphate, one of the greatest centres of Islamic learning and culture in the world, and reportedly throwing the contents of its legendary library into the Tigris River. His grandson Kublai Khan completed the conquest of China and established the Yuan dynasty, becoming the ruler of the largest empire in history at its peak. At its greatest extent, the Mongol Empire stretched from the Korean peninsula in the east to Poland in the west, from Siberia in the north to Vietnam in the south. It covered over 24 million square kilometres, nearly a quarter of the Earth's entire land surface. No empire before or since has ever come close. But here is the part of the story that most people miss entirely. The Mongols were not just destroyers. Under their rule, something remarkable happened.
The vast Silk Road trade network, which connected China to Europe, became safer and more active than it had ever been in history. Because the Mongols controlled the entire route from one end to the other, merchants could travel thousands of miles without crossing a hostile border. This period is known as the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol Peace. For roughly a century, goods, ideas, technology, and culture flowed between East and West at a scale the world had never seen before. Paper money, printing technology, gunpowder, and medical knowledge all travelled along these routes. Many historians argue that the Pax Mongolica directly accelerated the Renaissance in Europe, that the explosion of art, science, and culture that transformed Europe in the 14th and 15th centuries was partly fueled by the ideas and technologies that flowed west along Mongol-controlled trade routes. Even the explorer Marco Polo made his famous journey to China during this era, travelling safely through the Mongol Empire and bringing back knowledge that changed European understanding of the world forever. The same empire that destroyed civilizations also connected the world in ways it had never been connected before. So how did the greatest empire in history fall? The answer comes down to one fundamental problem. It grew too large to hold together. Genghis Khan had always intended for his empire to be ruled by his family, divided among his sons and grandsons. But as the empire grew larger, those divisions grew deeper. The four major successor states, the Yuan dynasty in China, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Golden Horde in Russia, began to develop their own identities, their own cultures, and their own ambitions. They started fighting each other. The unity that Genghis Khan had forged through sheer personal force and genius began to crack. Then came the Black Death. The same trade routes that had connected the world also carried the plague, and it swept through the Mongol Empire with devastating effect, killing millions of their own people alongside the populations they rule. The economic disruption that followed was catastrophic.
At the same time, conquered peoples who had been held down by Mongol military power began to push back. In China, a peasant rebellion led by Zhu Yuanzhang overthrew the Yuan dynasty in 1368, establishing the Ming dynasty and ending Mongol rule over China forever. In Persia and the Middle East, the Ilkhanate collapsed from internal conflict and economic pressure. In Russia, the Golden Horde slowly weakened over decades until the Russian principalities were strong enough to break free. By the late 1300s, what had once been the greatest empire in human history had fractured into pieces. And by the early 1400s, those pieces had largely disappeared. In less than 200 years, the empire that had seemed unstoppable had completely vanished from the earth. One man, one tribe, half the world. Genghis Khan remains one of the most extraordinary and complicated figures in all of human history.
He was a destroyer of civilizations, responsible for the deaths of tens of millions of people. But he was also a unifier, a visionary, and an unlikely architect of the connected modern world. The trade routes he protected accelerated the Renaissance. The legal codes he established influenced entire civilizations. The meritocratic principles he introduced were centuries ahead of their time. A boy abandoned on the steppe with nothing, who rose to rule half the world. No army could stop him. No kingdom could outlast him. No wall could hold him back. And yet, even his empire could not survive time itself. That is the story of the Mongols, the greatest rise and the most complete fall in all of human history. And that is what we do here at Time Nexus. We find the stories that actually changed everything and bring them to life. If you want more history like this, subscribe to Time Nexus. We post new videos every week. And if you want to go deeper, watch our full breakdown of the Battle of Thermopylae right here. Another impossible story, another moment that changed the world. See you in the next one.